Hey, what's up? It's Kit time for another video. Today we're talking about ultralight fishing lines, braid. Okay, now before we talk about this, I'm gonna say something about ester lines because a lot of people are asking me if I use ester lines or polyester lines or not. Okay, no, I tried them in the past before they got very popular, so I was sent some to try out. Uh, I didn't like them. Okay, the only thing I like about them is that they sink, so it gives you an extra dimension on how to present things. But if you're fishing around structure, or when you're casting long and then your line actually touches the sand, that's a disadvantage, like a very big one at that. Imagine when you're actually working your lure, your whole line is going through sand, right? Even if you're lifting it, okay, but most of the time when you're working it down with the rod tip down, so that you feel everything. Now if your rod tip is up and you're reeling it in, the wind's gonna hit the braid and that's gonna diminish your what do you call this, your and the rod tip. It's gonna diminish the sensitivity, and sometimes there are fish that we fish for that uh they feed very delicately. Okay, so kind of hard to detect. Ester lines are a disadvantage when it comes to this, at least for me. Now other people kind of like using them because for the sinking ability, like as far as less stretch is concerned. I mean, braid gives you that. uh if you choose the right braid, they're actually thinner than ester lines. And again, this is something that is important to me because of casting range, um distance. Okay, even if you're not casting far, the ability to be able to cast and reach farther, for me, is an extra feature that I want. Okay, so if it's not important to you, all in good, but for me, it's something that I want because there are some times where that is the advantage, and if you don't have that, you're at a disadvantage. So for me, it's just math. Okay, if it's a +1 to my advantage, I would always take it. And this is why I use mostly braid for my fishing. Alrighty. Now there are ways which we'll discuss to get to a point where it's what do you call this? It's similar to what ester can do. Okay, it's just actually getting to know the material more. Now, US braid, again, is very different from Japanese style braid. And guess what? European braid is also very different from US braid. European braid is actually closer to JDM braid than American style braid is. So you'll find that American spec braid will be always thicker than what do you call this? Than European and Japanese braid, much like their girls, actually, if you think about that. Right. So uh let's straighten you guys up here. uh I did not even think about that parallel. It's just now, that it's like that. Holy moly. But yeah, what a realization, right? um all right, so jeez, I lost my train of thought there. It's actually kind of funny. Anyway, so when you're looking at braid, right? The standards that I have used and experienced with a lot would be, when I was growing up, a lot of American braids. Okay, a lot of American braids, because at that point America was producing majority of the braids, and then I think a lot of people had access to the braids that they produced before JDM actually kind of boomed. And then later on, when I moved to the UAE, guess what? It shifted. Majority of the supplies that you get from here would be from Europe, because for the longest time it was Europe that was actually supplying the Middle East, up until we were able to order online from Japan, and then that's when we started getting JDM and JDM braid and getting into that. So I had literally some years of usage from all of this, and then I noticed the differences. Okay, now also for work, I started using again from JDM, went back to European style braid because of work. And then that's when I actually found some really good ones. And then after, obviously after leaving, I switched back to JDM. Not to say that I wasn't using JDM also at that time, because I had access to um, what's closest to JDM when it comes to when it came to our company, okay, which is like Korean spec. Okay, and I'm gonna give you an example because this wasn't openly available before, and it was Korea who actually did that. So hats off to Jay for that. Jay is the guy behind Rapala and all the Rapala brands in Korea. Very good friend of mine as well. Okay, so let's talk about American braid first. Now, if you're talking about 4-pound test, let's say, or even 2. Now, if you are familiar with US braid, you'll find that, you know, they always mark everything by pound test. So the lowest that I found was I think 2-pound test, and you won't find it. You won't find it openly sold, even in tackle shops and stuff. So I'm not too sure if there's 1 pound, but 2 definitely I have found. Okay, they're not that cheap, but they're sold on Amazon. If you look at the beading community, you know those guys that make beads like bracelets and stuff, they have access to this line. It's 2-pound test fire line. And you know, if you're in the States and you're not able to find the braids that I'm mentioning, this is your best bet. 2-pound test fire line. It's not really braid, it's fused, but you know, better than nothing. They're not that cheap, but definitely something that you can find. Beading, okay, of all the things. So they're sold in the beading community, to the beading community, as a string that they can put beads on, an extra strong string. Okay, and if you are not able to find like all these Japanese lines or European lines in the internet, or you know, you want to go down the cheap, this is probably your best bet. But it's not really 2-pound test. It's probably like 4 or something like that, because American braid tests higher, way higher. They're actually under tested when they're sold, underrated when they're sold. Okay, you compare Japanese braid, they're closer to the breaking strain than the American braid is. The only way for braid to get stronger is to put on more material, and this is why, you know, when they say that extra strong braid and stuff like that, it's just thicker. It's just thicker. So as far as the quality is concerned, or the diameters are concerned, you have Japanese braid, which is like the thinnest, and then the European style braid, which is a little bit thicker, but they have accurate diameters. Okay, so like take for example, you take the difference between these two is that the what do you call this? The Europeans base it on diameter. The what do you call this? The Japanese base it on PE, okay, which is a form of diameter, but they use a spool to actually measure it, okay. And then Americans, where they base it on, I don't know, but I honestly don't know what they base it on, but why it's not diameter, no one can answer. You know, I asked a lot of people that's actually involved in all of this. The closest thing that I got was that the pound test rating comes from like the mono times of mono, and they tie a knot, and then they measure the break. Once it breaks, it's rated on the higher end. So if it says that it breaks at 4, it means that it broke at 4 plus. Okay, or 20, it breaks at 20 plus, but it's not really like super exact. That's why you'll have like a huge variance when it comes to mono, braid, and all this. And then if you test the strength on what do you call this, the braids, like take for example the IGFA actually does this in their channel, and on YouTube you'll find that they're testing 50-pound Power Pro, and then it breaks at like sometimes 100 or something like that, you know, or 80, 60, something like that. Whereas if you're testing Japanese style braid, they'll break lower than what's rated, okay, because they're basing it on diameter. Different Europeans also do the same, but the diameter is very inconsistent, because if you think that your braid is actually the same thickness all throughout, it's not. It actually goes like this, you know. So it depends on, so they're testing on average diameter, you know. That's also why the strength from section to section is different. So they take an average, let's say an average of 5 or an average of 10, whatever, you know, it depends. So that's why there's variances, okay. Again, if you're in the States and you don't have access to the Japanese style braid and you want to actually follow with this whole thing, Fireline, in the beading community, you can find 2-pound spools. I will try and see if I can actually have like an Amazon link for you guys on this, okay. Not gonna promise, but I've seen them with that. It's not cheap as well, okay. Now why is thin line important? See, you're dealing with thin leaders, okay, when this, and if you do it right. So basically the leader that I use for this would be 6-pound and under, okay. Now I use 8-pound for like the braid that I use for shore jigging. That's where I start, 8, and then I stop at like around 15 for my light shore jigging. So under that would be the ultralight stuff. So 6 pounds and under. The thinnest leader I use is this one right here. It's 2.75 lb. This is from Suffix, and as you can see, it's actually fishing line, okay. So because I can't find leader that's thinner than this, but this is what I use. Now, do I recommend it? Depending on the fish that you use. How strong is it? Well, I had a 23-minute video on Instagram of me fighting whatever fish that was. 23 minutes it held, and it was this reel right here, okay. So it can take the pressure. It's just really up to you. So it's skill based, okay. Most of the time I use 4-pound test, and this is Suffix Invisalign. This is fluorocarbon. Now I don't use fluorocarbon all the time, okay. They're very difficult to tie. Knots from they're not easy to tie knots with, and I don't really think fluorocarbon makes so much of a difference in 90% of the fishing conditions you face, and that is for the whole spectrum, not just ultralight, okay. So most of the time I stick with mono, because mono has a lot more abrasion resistance. It has a lot more strength, stretch on the low end, which gives the whole thing a bit more shock absorption when it comes to that, okay. Now especially with ultralight, you want the shock absorption properties of mono, which is also why I use really long leaders, okay. So as far as leaders are concerned, I actually use like really long sections, okay. Now this does two things. Firstly, it gives the braid and the lure a really long separation. So braid is very visible, especially when you're fishing in shallow water. Fish get spooked easier. So a long section of mono or leader, whatever, if you want fluorocarbon, go right ahead. It actually breaks the shadow, okay, because braid casts it casts a darker shadow than mono or fluorocarbon, Okay, that's and obviously the more visible braid is separated. Okay, now another thing that you should actually look at when you're choosing between mono and what do you call this, fluorocarbon, is that fluorocarbon sinks, mono floats. So if I'm using, say, heavier jig heads, let's say anywhere that's 2.5 to 5 grams, I would use uh, mono. Okay, because mono, it wouldn't matter. Okay, mono doesn't really matter. Even if it kind of floats, it's still very manageable. The lure would actually bring it down because of its weight and all that. But more importantly, I stay away from structure. Okay, so the bottom or whatever, my line just goes up. Whereas with fluorocarbon, it will actually sink. Okay, so it really depends. If I want things to sink, like take for example, I'm using lures that I want to sink in deeper water than let's say 3 meters. Okay, if I'm on a kayak and I'm fishing, largely vertically or diagonally, I'd use fluorocarbon, and it sinks my lures faster. Okay, lures that sink, like take for example sinking or diving lures, small crankbaits and all that, I would use fluorocarbon. uh this is why you'll see me have something like this. This is mostly for floating stuff, this is mostly for sinking stuff. I just make it so, and when I hold it even in the dark, I would know because this is heavier and this is lighter. So something clever there, I guess. I don't know, whichever one you want to actually look at. So if you see here how I spool it also, see, if you see there's a what do you call this, there's a huge gap between my line and the lip, because for this particular instance I actually use a really long section, almost as if I'm using it as a so there's at least a few yards that I can put on for mono there. Okay, now for this one, I use short sections of fluorocarbon, so I spooled it up quite tight. When you're fishing deep, it kind of doesn't matter, uh, because you're fishing diagonally, like when I'm off a kayak. So I would use like probably 4 3 arm spans, and that's short. Okay, as opposed to probably 10 on this one right here. So when I'm casting out in shallower water, it's much better because fish spook easier in shallower water. And even when I'm also fishing like topwater lures, small topwater lures, I would use this, because with mono floating, it helps keep everything on top, and it helps it float. If I use a heavier section, then it would pull it down, because the pressure is going down like that. So just instead of using ester lines, you know what I mean. So you could use like a long section of what do you call this, of fluorocarbon on this, and there you have it. You have your front section actually sinking down fast. So if that's what you want. So again, just a little knowledge on what the behavior is of your material actually helps. Now, for let's say there are suspending lures, I would use this with a little section of fluorocarbon. So, it helps it go down if that's what you want. Okay, so that's in presentations that's deeper than 3 meters or something. But for the shallow stuff, yeah, you could juggle things around according to your taste, I guess. For me, that's what I do. Now, one of the things that I've learned in fly fishing is very important, and it has kind of opened my eyes on what to do with ultralight tackle. Okay, now with fly fishing, what happens is that you're dealing with a very thick fly line, and then you have a 9-foot taper for your leader, and then on the top section of that, or the front section of that leader, is a tippet, typically 1 to 2 feet in length. It depends on what your style is or what you're fishing for. Excuse me. So what happens is that, you know, there are some flats where it gets a lot of current, and this happened in one of the flats that I'm fishing, and it's facing out towards like kind of like a river system, and it hits this flat hard. Okay, so this is at the bend of a structure, like an island, and then there's a huge flat there. The water just comes in and then, you know, kind of sweeps through the flat, whereas the other flats are sheltered. So although you get a lot of water movement around these flats, this particular one gets the direct current from open water, and then it goes in at such a high velocity. Okay, and then the fish are there, like the bigger ones actually. So what happened while I was fishing is that I popped my leader so much, and it was up to a point where I was already using like 10, and on a 5 weight, that's a lot. That's actually something that you shouldn't be doing, but I was popping leaders so much that I was already using 10-pound, and I think that was like the thickest that I went, or maybe I went 15 or something, but it popped, and I was wondering why. So this is exactly what happened. Okay, so imagine this is me, and then you're on the fish's side, and you know, I'm holding the rod and everything. So we're about 60 feet away from each other. I cast out, the fly rolls up to you. Okay, now remember, let's say you're using 8-pound. So the fish takes it, but when the fish takes it, it doesn't go down current. The current is from running from right to left. Okay, so what happens is the fish takes the fly, and then it runs towards the right. And if you look, because of the current, your fly line is actually going that, like that, and then boom, so it forms like a D. Okay, hold on, let me get a ruler. So this will work. Okay, so it forms something like this, right? My fly line. Okay, and then what happens when the fish runs? It runs going like that. Okay, so it's literally going on a U-turn with a little bit of an angle. Okay, so your line is like that regularly, and then the fish takes the line, okay, and it forms a U-turn, and it's like that basically, right? It's gonna go like that. The pressure that you feel as someone holding the rod is going forward, but in actuality what happens is that your line is curved. It goes like this, and then there's pressure going this way. Okay, and that pops the leader, because this whole what do you call this whole curve right here far exceeds the breaking strain of the line. Believe it or not, it happens the same way on thicker line when you're fishing ultralight. It's the same thing, and this is the reason why I like fishing with long rods, and it's such a difficult of finding the right rod. Okay, so now you'll see that there are 8.5-foot rods in the arsenal. So I have the Varivas, and I have the Shimano Dialuna for that purpose, because the best way is for you to actually lift the rod up as high as you can. And what happens is that it takes all the line. Okay, it takes all the line, and then it makes it go direct to the fish. If you don't do that, your leader will pop. Now, if you're fishing with US style braid, and you happen to hook like a really good fish, it will happen. And fish will not go down current, because it makes it difficult for them to breathe. Okay, because the water rushing to the back of the gills will actually drown them. So what happens with the fish is that when they take, they always go upstream. So that goes against your line. because your line is being taken downstream. So there's a technical reason, okay, why you should be using like longer rods, because it's easier. Longer rods will pick up the line faster, right? The shorter rods, you're going at an angle, okay, like a shallower, steep, shallower angle, okay, especially when your casts are longer. um you know, it's very difficult for you because it's just going to get to the point where the line actually kind of resists the hinge. But with longer rods, you're able to actually clear it faster. So if you're fishing a really light line with targeting bigger fish, you're gonna need a longer rod. Okay, now the two rods that I have, uh, I'm not too sure if you can still get these, because I'm pretty sure that the Dialuna has been discontinued just recently. I think a few years ago. The Varivas has been like gone for like a longer time. It had like an initial run, right? I'm sure that you'd be able to find um rods from, say, I've seen recently from Abu Garcia that they had like really long rods for ultralight fishing. So that's something to look at. Okay. So again, this is the reason why I like, or I prefer using these really thin braids from Japan, because guess what? Instead of actually struggling with that, even with that, you could still do it, or it's preferred that you do it, because guess what? Once you do that, it clears faster. Thicker braid, even when you're doing this and you're aware that this happens, thicker braid will have like a lot of resistance going out of the water, whereas with this, it actually just slices the water. So when you actually are in that situation where a big fish takes your line and then goes the other way, it's faster doing the lift and getting the line out of the water. It's way faster. It's way faster with Japanese style braid. Now, what I used, just so we're back on the what do you call this? This is what I used. Okay, and they made this for me. Because if you look, I have like 1,640 yards, or 1,000. Oh, so there, 1,500 meters pools. 0.4. This is 0.4, which was 6 pound test, and this was actually quite accurate if you measure it, because this is what I asked for. So they made me batches of this. It's very difficult to actually get lengths like these, because when they're building it, there's damage. And the thinner they are, the harder it is to what do you call this, to do it without damage. So I was actually told off after this, and they're like, Kit, what you're asking for is very difficult to do, so don't ask anymore. But they did give me that, so that's fine. Now when I'm fishing around snags, and for this particular one, I was actually using it for jigging. Okay, so this is the same, like 1,500 meter spool, but this is suffix 832, and it's multicolored. Okay, now I have Jay from Rapala, Korea, to thank for this, because he's the guy who's actually doing a lot of the multicolored stuff. But as you can see here, it's 4 pound test. It's not really, it's about 6. But these are all I still have them, so I'm gonna keep on using them. But it might be that you'll have a hard time looking for them in shorter spools. Of course, I think there were like 250 meter spools before that are sold, or 150 meter spools. Another one that I used before was nano braid, and they've also discontinued it. So if you find like the thinnest, let's say PE 0.4, also if you can find that, multi-award winning braid actually in Europe, if you find that on eBay, get a spool or two, it'll do you well. Okay, now I've been using these as well. This is the Dangan braid from Major Craft. You can still find this on Amazon, 150 meter spool. This is actually quite affordable. Okay, and And this is also what I use to tie assist hooks with. So these are used. This is not brand new. Obviously, it would be crazy to actually do that. Such a waste if you just did that. So I put it on a reel, and then when the line actually gets cut after a while, because eventually you're gonna have snags that you need to cut, or there's a crazy needlefish that would start chewing on that, which happens a lot. You're gonna have to change. Now, instead of actually changing or reversing it and adding more backing, I just take it off because I use it for assist hooks, and they're really fantastic for that. And these are also cheaper, so you can find this on Amazon until today. All right. Obviously, the star of the show for me is Oshikage, and this is it right here. It's super super thin, very strong. Problem is momoy, but these are all Oshikage here. Okay, so these reels, okay, all Oshikage, and they're like my default, very thin. 0.3 is like super, like they have like 0.1, and most of their reels are actually spooled with 0.1, which breaks at about 4 pounds, and that's very strong. um Very, very, very good fishing line, and the thinnest that I found so far. I know there are brands like Varivas, and all. There are other brands, YGK, that probably have the same or similar, but Oshikage, I've found to be very reliable for me. The problem is, although the Momoi themselves have actually sent me a link, they don't ship overseas. But I'm going to be talking with them about that, and hopefully we'll find a solution. Otherwise, you can contact Barracuda because they have these on stock from time to time. They go really fast, guys. I mean, when the people here found out that this is what I've been using, kind of, taken off. So just try and search for Barracuda on Instagram, and then get in touch with them on WhatsApp, and you'll find that from time to time you'll actually get lucky. Now, the good thing about Barracuda is that they have custom spools of 200 meters instead of 150. And this is also part of the reason why I love Oshikage, because of the 200-meter spools as opposed to 150. Because majority of the time, guess what? I'm fishing for bigger fish instead of the smaller stuff, and the 200 actually kind of helps. The 150. I know that there are times when, or most of the time, if you actually have a fish that runs 100, you're screwed. But the 200 actually saved me a few times, just because I had like 200 meters. I was so afraid that it would get to the connection, and the connection's weak. You have like a knot, or another knot to worry about. So it just gives me like the what's this the peace of mind. As far as the 150 is concerned, or even 100-meter spools, because they're starting to sell like 100-meter spools now. If you're fishing for smaller fish, that's fine. That's all in good. But if you're actually actively fishing for decent fish with ultralight tackle, then the 200-meter spools become kind of a good thing. Otherwise, don't worry about it. Now, for 4-pound and 6-pound test, as you could have seen, I mean, this one is actually rigged with this right here, and it's been working really well for me. Obviously, I can use it in deeper water, but even if we're fishing, let's say 30 meters or whatnot, and I actually hook something that runs, I don't have to worry. I know that it's a full spool of this, and it's quite reliable. So the Pro 8 has become like the X8 for now, but I'm not too sure if they're still selling the 0.4. Okay, so that's it for the line and the leaders. Okay, I will be discussing knots and the lures together. Okay, just so that we cover that bit as well. So I'm going to show you how I connect my braid with this light leaders. Okay, because it's kind of a headache, really. And then the knots that I use on the lures when we're discussing like the lures, because that's gonna be a long discussion, man. Alrighty. that's it for this one. If you have questions, go right ahead and drop them in the comment section. Share your experiences as well. It's valuable for the community to actually see some other things other than what I'm saying here. Obviously, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Only that there's better ways to skin a cat. So if you have experience in doing something for chasing after different fish or whatever, drop them in the comment section. I'd like to thank the members, of course, for supporting this channel and help moving it forward. If you want to support this channel, best way, of course, is to click on the join button and be a member. There's two choices there, all right, that suit whichever level you want to support this channel with. Obviously, liking, subscribing, and sharing, commenting, all these help the channel as well, so go ahead and do that, please. Alrighty, that is it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Class dismissed.